Welcome to Choose the Nickel. I'm your host, George Bailey. My co-founder and technical support is the gorgeous Christina Bailey. This podcast is about giving kids financial freedom. We're interviewing fascinating people for their insights about how children learn to be financially savvy. Our guests come from diverse, sometimes conflicting schools of thought, and we love the opportunity to learn from them. We encourage all to weigh our guests' ideas on how to help children thrive, both financially and in general. We invite you to visit our website at www.choosethenickel.com, subscribe to our newsletter, and try out the things we are learning on the podcast. Our next episode features DanJulius. Daniel counsels families through complex personal and legal estate planning matters and small business owners in the best formational structure and governance for minimizing tax liability. He has advised clients with net estates in the tens of millions and tens of thousands, and takes personal pride in giving the same level of care and professionalism to millionaires and middle-class clients alike. This interview does not constitute legal advice and does not create an attorney-client relationship with any listener. We touch on general legal principles, but laws vary significantly from state to state, so our discussion cannot be relied upon for your specific situation. Your fact pattern is unique, and you should contact an attorney licensed in your state before doing anything of legal importance. Ladies and gentlemen, DanJulius. DanJulius, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, George. It's a beautiful morning here in St. Louis.
Oh, it is, isn't it? I actually was just enjoying the morning with our good friend Maurice Chrisman. He would probably say hello. I'm his business partner, so I'm actually licensed, legally entitled to be able to say hello on his behalf.
You're a representative for him. Okay,
a representative. That's how these things work. You and I, being lawyers, we know these things. We
understand that.
We understand. So in any case, I wanted to start off by asking you a little bit about what you do. I think I have a pretty good idea of that. Our audience, however, does not. Tell us what you do.
Sure. So I'm an estate planning attorney, and, that's a term of art, sort of. So usually when I explain that to people, I say I do trusts, wills, and probate. And usually they know 2 or 3 of those words, so they sort of understand. But basically what that is managing somebody's assets and their body when they are disabled or when they are dead. So most people think of estate planning, you write out your last will and testament, and this is where you want the grandfather clock to go to and the jewelry and your assets. Well, that's part of it. The other part of it is situating your assets in such a way that if something happens and you're hit by the proverbial Budweiser truck, have you heard that one before? That's the one we use commonly. If you're walking the dog and you're hit by the Budweiser truck, and you're not deceased, but you're in a coma, you're incapacitated, how does your spouse, how does your family, how do your friends take over managing your assets for you so that they can take care of you while you're incapacitated? So it's a mix of both those things. What happens when I'm gone, and what happens now when I can't control my assets for myself?
That's very interesting, specifically because I think that even I tend to gravitate towards, immediately thinking of what happens after I die. What happens with my stuff, because that's the field that I work in.
Right.
But there is this other element of what happens when I go into a coma?
Yeah, right. And George, we all know the famous, almost cliched scenes from movies where the lawyer sits down with the whole family and he says, I'm going to read the last will and testament of Aunt B. And then he says, this so-and-so gets this and so-and-so gets $100 million. And we've all seen that. Well, that's not really how it happens. Yeah. Of course, but that's how people think of lawyers when it comes to this sort of thing. So that's what predominates in the popular culture. But no, like you just said, and you gravitate toward the life insurance side of it, obviously. But frankly, people that are your age, my age, people anywhere from, 18 to 60, we're past the phase of infant mortality. We're more likely to be disabled at this point. We're more likely to live to our life expectancy and in the meantime be disabled than we are to, just be struck dead by lightning right now. So the disability planning is actually a really critical component of it.
That is really good to know, particularly for parents out there who are listening. I think that these are the types of plans that they can put into place. They can, start to really think okay, I've been thinking a little bit about what happens when I die and we have this policy and whatnot. How many have really thought about, and who wants to think about what happens when you are debilitated and, sitting on a hospital bed, unable to speak. You're a vegetable. Exactly. Not pleasant thoughts, but I want to know, but I want to know.
Yeah, but it's the responsibility to do it. Yeah, sorry, go ahead. Mm-hmm.
Is there anything in your childhood that would point towards this career path?
That's such a good question. When I was growing up, I thought I was going to be a teacher, and I thought I was going to, be a professor somewhere, something maybe, and write a book or do something like that. But then when I got, it didn't really kick in until we were in law school. We went to law school at the same time, and I had a trust and estates class, and there was a light bulb that went off in my head because, I realized that I could be the type of lawyer that didn't sue people. But that's just not my personality. I don't like to be in conflict. I don't like to be yelling across the table. I don't like to be bluffing and negotiating and that sort of stuff. So in my field,
I love a good scream every once in a while.
Yeah,
I
can see
an epic rant.
Right.
I could, but I have to be together with my wife, and she's like in the mood too to like, cheer me on into my anger and whatnot. But no, it's a general rule. I don't like to sue people.
No, in the privacy of your own home, maybe. But, it's not good for your blood pressure. It's not good for your cortisol levels. It's not good. But no, just my personality. I don't like it. And so I learned that you can help families.
Yeah.
This is a field of the law where I sit across the table from, a mom and a dad that have been married for 40 years. And they sacked away a lot of money in their 401k, and they have appropriate levels of life insurance, and they raise kids, and the kids are grown up, and they did good. They're good models for behavior, and I can help them protect it for if something unthinkable happens. So there was this light bulb, like I said, that went off in law school when I realized that there was this field of law that was not adversarial and more, helping. So that's when it was not necessarily for my childhood. I probably wanted to be an army man and then a professor.
So little Daniel Julius would have been surprised because little Daniel Julius wanted to be fill in the blank. Go.
Yeah, probably the starting forward for the St. Louis Blues hockey team.
Yeah. Oh, really? You were a hockey fan?
And
continue to be.
Younger. Yeah, but it's probably more baseball now. But I mean, I've always liked both. But yeah, I was an enormous hockey fan when I was growing up. Big hockey fan, and that's what I wanted to be. And that's like every boy's childhood dream, or a lot of them, to grow up and play professional sports for their hometown. So that might have been what it was. But yeah, never would I have thought that I was practicing this when I was 10 years old. There's no way. That's funny. Yeah,
that's good. But you said that you've kind of since drifted into baseball territory.
Baseball in
how did that happen?
Probably my number one. I mean, even from when I was growing up, my dad took us on, me and my brother, on vacations to baseball stadiums that were closing. So like the White Sox played in Old Comiskey Park. It was one of the oldest stadiums in the United States compared to Fenway and Wrigley. And before it closed, he took me there in 1990 when I was in kindergarten. And then we went to see the Colorado Rockies in their first year when they were still playing in Mile High. And they were still playing where the Denver Broncos play, but we knew they weren't going to play there anymore, so we went to see them there. And then this is just a thing that my dad did with us. Almost every summer we went on a baseball trip and went to minor league games and that sort of stuff. So it was always there, just as in my adult life has blossomed. That's like my number one hobby in regard to anything now, basically.
Nice. I like that. That's a very cool story. I remember being into baseball as a kid. I still love it. How do you feel about, now this dates the interview. By the time we release this, it could be a different playing field. How do you feel about the Cardinals' performance right now?
Well, you can't be happy with them like 1 or 2 games over 500, but I think they're headed in the right direction. I think that I like the way they're playing now. They stole like 3 bases at the game I was at yesterday. They are like running, they're being more aggressive. I love it. The defense is better. I love that it's a bunch of kids. I love when we bring up young guys and let them play. I love that. So I'm cautiously optimistic, George.
Yeah, I love that the Cardinals have a really healthy farm system.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's great. I love the Cardinals. Full disclosure, I'm a total A's freak and have been my whole, oh my gosh, just love watching them. They're killing it right now, but they're also in a super, they're in a super hard division.
Yeah, they are. But I mean, I root for those guys too. The classic underdogs.
Did you play hockey as a kid?
No, never once. That was kind of.
But you dreamed of being a hockey player, and you didn't play hockey.
No, I could, and that's one of those things. This is I wish I could have. I wish I'd told you that I could have, but that was a little more expensive. All the equipment, paying for rink time, that just wasn't in the card. It wasn't. All the sports I played were connected to my grade school, and they're, a nominal charge. You could just play. Hockey is a club sport. That was a little bit more expensive. I couldn't do it. But I played baseball and everything else. So
that's a very interesting dynamic for a kid to be like, this is my dream, but the dream from a financial perspective seems unattainable.
Yeah.
How do kids deal with that? I mean, how did you deal with that? Were you very aware that your dream was out there, or did you really think like, no, one day I'm just going to stand up, I'm going to get out of bed, put on my skates and just
lace up the skates and get out there? No, I think kids are really pliable, and they can reconcile things that maybe adults can't. Like, I think I knew I really wanted to do this, but I just couldn't do it, and I accepted it. I wasn't like, oh, if only. I mean, I didn't think there was a way that I could, so I just accepted it and played all the other sports, and I was fine. And I mean, you probably see this with your kids now. I mean, they might love to go to Disneyland every month, but you can't do it.
But they've never been.
Accept it. And, yeah, right. There you go.
And we're not going anytime soon.
There you go. Yeah, exactly. Now, isn't it funny being older now and seeing? From that perspective of paying for a trip to Disney, and that's just like seems unattainable.
Yeah,
very expensive.
But you know what? That's one of those kind of sweet mercies in life that children are able to dream.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, they recognize that this ain't happening. I want to fight monsters on Jupiter. But I'm gonna have to wait, or humanity's gonna have to wait like several hundred years.
Right,
to be able to do that.
Right. Exactly.
Oh, that is a great point. And so now we firmly established that there is nowhere in the realm of your childhood, even a kernel to be found that was preparing you to be an estate planner.
No, not at all. Not at all. No, there was nothing. I mean, it was beyond. I didn't even know what it was. I wouldn't have been able to conceive of it probably. So
do you think it would have sounded boring if somebody said, Daniel Julius, if like some man had come out of a phone booth wearing shades, and told you like, we need you to pass this test so that you can be the greatest estate planner, that's going to bring like, it would have come out of the blue.
Yeah, right. It's a fantasy. There's no way I would.
Okay, sorry. I'm beating it to death. I'm beating it to death. Yeah, I'm just. I love it. Okay,
yeah.
So let's go a little bit more deeply into what you do and why this is important for young parents. I want to focus on parents, maybe even older parents who want their kids to be financially responsible. How is it that you help?
Right. Okay. So, and I have a story to share with you that is, days old right now. We have clients right now.
It's not recent enough.
Now,
go ahead.
Okay, let me go a little.
Or just lie to me. Okay, that's fine.
This is true. I promise you. And I'm sorry to bring it up, but this happens. We have clients who, it's 15-year-old twin daughters, and their mom passed away from cancer a year ago. And then, was it last weekend now? The time is flying by. Their dad died in a motorcycle accident. So now they're both 15 years old. And, you that's an indescribable trauma that you cannot even begin to hope or want to comprehend what they're going through.
Wow.
That's the emotional side, the spiritual side of it, however you want to put it. The economic side of it is that their dad did well for himself and built up money, had life insurance, but without a plan, what's going to happen is they don't have access to it because they're 15. They can't. So for the next 3 years, every time their money, what is legally their money, it's vested in them. Anytime that needs to be used to send them to camp, to pay for private school tuition, to pay for medical bills, to pay for cell phones, whatever it is, somebody is going to have to petition the court. You set up what's called a conservatorship. And that's where somebody is appointed by the court to handle the affairs of somebody that can't do it themselves. And these guys can't do it not because of mental incapacity, but just because of their age. So every time they need the money, somebody's going to have to petition the court to spend it on them. And that's an extremely expensive process. So that's the bad part now. The really bad part is that when they turn 18, it's all theirs. So you tell me what a 18-year-old does when they get $2 million. They could be the most well-adjusted, scholarly, mature, bright, motivated, you name it, 18-year-old in the world. But getting $2 million changes you. And to say nothing about your parents being gone, but getting $2 million, this is why I tell people all the time, you don't necessarily have to worry about your kids buying the Mercedes and then, squandering the money. Okay, yeah, that's bad. What you have to worry about is them losing their motivation to do certain things. You're looking at applying to graduate school and thinking, wait, I got $2 million. I'm taking the LSAT for what reason? Or I'm putting in the extra hours in this class for, wait, why? I got $2 million waiting for me. And you can't help it. That surplus in your brain changes your brain chemistry. And it sucks it away. And it's not a happy life, George. I mean, just the idea that you have $2 million in your early 20s and you can do whatever you want, that actually doesn't lead to happiness. You need to work to be happy. Like, we're built for that. We're beasts of burden. Human beings need to work towards something to feel fulfilled, and to take that away from somebody can inalterably change them. And some people do well with it, but I've seen lots and lots of clients where they try to live on it, and it's like winning the lottery. You didn't earn it, and it's squandered, and you're deeply unhappy. So
I recently within the last week, it's recent enough, I recently read an article about how, this issue of sudden acquisition of wealth, and that it is a thing. And people kind of brush it off and laugh and like, ho hum, those troubles are so hard. Oh, $2 million, they laugh at, athletes. Athletes who all of a sudden find themselves with a $30 million contract.
Exactly.
And they have never had money. They've never known. But you know what? It does. And your friends change and everybody looks at you differently. And so I'm actually quite sympathetic to what that can do to a person and that issue. So that for me raises the question for you. What can we do about that? Exactly. And not to prevent it. I want to go back to prevention later because that's an issue I want to talk about as well. But what can we do once the deed is done?
Yeah, good question. So that's exactly what I was about to say. I just gave you the negative part of it. So what is the solution to it? Well, unfortunately, the ounce of prevention prevents a pound of cure. The prevention part of it is what you can do. And at least in Missouri, this is the lawyer caveat. What we do is place the assets in a trust. So mom and dad name the beneficiary of their life insurance to be their trust. And then what happens is a trust is just like a legal document. It's a set of instructions. It says this person is in charge. They're called a trustee. This person is going to receive the assets. They're called a beneficiary. And these are the instructions that the trustee needs to do in giving the money to the beneficiary. So now there's a loved one in somebody's life doling out the money as appropriate as the mom and dad would want it to be done if they were here alive and well. But they're the ones in charge of it. They're not allowing somebody to run out and buy a Ferrari. They're not allowing somebody to live on a beach $50,000 a year in Cabo and just feel this malaise and, ennui and this sort of stuff. So that's what you do. You name something. The truth is, after the fact, there's not much you can do. You can hope that people in your life, the guardians that will eventually take over, in my example, these twin daughters, the guardians will help them grow and mature just as mom and dad would have done, and see this, as kind of the danger that it is. But, honestly, there's not great things to do after it's done. This is why we preach getting something done while you're alive and well. That's what estate planning is.
That's a great point. And I want to follow up with asking, can the mother or the father place conditions on the acquisition of that wealth, such as,
absolutely.
And what kinds of conditions could they place in this circumstance that would be helpful?
So if they were both still alive and they had done this?
Yeah.
what you would have done, the most common thing is you put restrictions that come from the Internal Revenue Code, which say what expenditures the money can be used for, and it comes down to health, education, maintenance, and support. And health and education are obvious. Maintenance and support mean to maintain their standard of living. So to pay for things like if their transmission goes out on their car, you can spend trust principal on that. Or if, they're living in a house and the roof needs to be repaired, the trust can pay for that. It doesn't mean if they're driving a Civic that they can suddenly get an S-Class Mercedes, because that's not maintaining their standard of living. So those are the restrictions. You can get as creative as you want, though. You could say that the trustee mirrors payouts based on a person's W-2. You could say that you can't, it doubles your income, but you at least have to earn something. So if you decide that you want to live on a beach and you're just working for minimum wage and getting $5,000 a year, well, that's all you're going to get from your trust. If you're a hard worker and you become a neurosurgeon and you're pulling in $300,000 a year, well, then you're more responsible and the trustee can give you more. You can do that. You can tie it to drug testing. You can tie it to attaining a degree in college. You can tie it to an age. You can do whatever you want, because you, as the trust maker, as the settlor of the trust, that's what the legal term is, the settlor or the grantor, you can put whatever conditions you want on it, and then it's your money still. So that's why it applies to the beneficiaries.
And just to clarify, the settlor of the trust is, in this case at least, the parent, or in any case, the person who is establishing the trust.
Exactly. The person who's executing a trust, it's called settling a trust, or a grantor. There's all these different words for it, but they're the person that creates the trust. And they don't have to be the same person as the trustees. The trustees are the person that are in charge of it. They can be different individuals, but usually, like if you set up a trust right now, you're an adult and you're married, you would set up a trust. You'd be the settlor and the trustee, and then name successors later on.
One of the ideas that I've had for this type of a circumstance is to create a condition in which the beneficiary needs to become educated to a certain extent about financial matters. That maybe there's some curriculum in place, like this person needs to have been taught such and such a curriculum. And those curricula actually do in fact exist, and maybe a banker could help you identify something like that. But, and it could be one of several conditions. But, that's the great thing about having, conditions tied to your trust. Now, I want to go and get a little bit more basic and then, ask you, a couple more questions, but can you define what a trust is? We've been talking about it for the last few minutes, but I want to make sure that we actually have a solid definition with which people can identify.
Sure. So I'll go into multiple levels with that. So a trust is a stack of documents. It looks like a big, thick contract. And that's what it is practically in the real world.
It sounds exciting already.
I know everybody is just like gripping their steering wheel with anticipation while they're
I've been drooling
right now.
Yeah, I'm drooling.
Yeah, right. Exactly. But it's a stack of documents, but legally it's kind of a combination of things. It's a combination between a contract, what you sign, what two parties sign agreement with each other, but also a legal entity like an LLC or a corporation. And the reason for that is a trust can own things. I can set up a DanJulius trust and have it buy bonds, or I can have it buy mutual funds, and it can legally own them. I don't own them. My trust owns them. Just like if I set up a business for myself and it was a corporation, my corporation could buy computers for our offices, and I don't own them. My corporation owns them. That right there is the thrust of how trust works. Trusts work because when you die, you don't own something. Your trust owns it. And then it doesn't have to go through this rigmarole of the court system and that sort of stuff. Not as bad. And when I'm disabled, it's not as big of a deal because I don't own the asset. My trust owns it, and therefore my wife or my successor trustee can manage it. So it's a mix between a contract, a legal document that says I and this other person, this other party agree to do this, and an entity that can own something and do certain things and have people act on its behalf. So I call it like a hybrid between a contract and an entity. And that's sort of what it is. I hope that's not too abstract.
No, I think that helps. I think that helps a good deal, and that listeners will appreciate that.
Yeah.
Do you have any final words of advice for parents?
Oh, geez.
Particularly as they're trying to teach their kids about money.
About money?
And maybe not just about money, but maybe parents and how they teach their kids about, wills, trusts.
Sure, absolutely. I would say that parents, if you have a kid, and if you have a house, especially if you have both those things together, just do something. You might not need a trust. We recommend it for everybody. You might be in a state where they're not used as much, but go do something. I'd say it's your responsibility. Look, you're going to die. You're going to die whether you have a trust or not. You know that. So what you can do is make it easier for your family later on. So I would recommend that you do that. That's like what you do as an adult. The parenting part of it, I would say don't shelter your kids from money issues. I don't know I think you agree with me on this. Don't make them feel like
I actually have an entire podcast about that issue right there. So go ahead. Yeah, I do agree.
The more they can know, the better. Don't make them think they can have everything. Don't make them think they can have nothing. Show that there are consequences. Show that you need to work to get money. And then when you have money, you can buy things that you want. There's not this magic, little plastic card that can get you anything you want in the world. There's nothing that happens without consequences.
It comes
you
close.
Gotta work for something. Yeah, right. Yeah, it sure does. Until it all comes crashing down. But no, like just tying consequences to actions and to expenditures is what I would preach, and let them work for it. Don't, kids are tough, man. Make them get outside and rake the leaves and do something if they want that new Pokemon thing or whatever.
Who knows what's in right now? Yeah, I'm so out of touch. Okay,
I've never heard of. Yeah.
So, in any case, last question.
Sure.
What is your very favorite charitable cause?
That's a great question. That's really hard to pin something down. But if I really, really, really had to choose one, there's a firm in St. Louis called Safe Connections, and they give assistance to battered women, and if they have little kids, they do everything from literally holding somebody. Like if you're in a dangerous situation and there's domestic violence in the home, and you literally need to be in a different place to be safety, to not be battered. They provide that. And then the critical next step is the emotional counseling, like getting somebody to not go back to it. That's what always breaks my heart about it, is that, it's this horrible situation. And then people find themselves going back into the pit because of all the horrible conflicting emotions that go on. So that one has a really big place in my heart. But, I appreciate what every charity does, basically.
That's very powerful. And I think that you're right that one of the hardest and most heartbreaking parts about that issue is that it's repeated on the same victims again and again. That's a hard issue. Why do you think that is? What makes that so challenging?
Oh my God. I mean, this is a 4-hour long podcast in itself, but the reason is because one of the big reasons I think is because of the psychological component to it, where the abuser makes the person who is abused feel like, even despite the terror I'm bringing on you right now, you still need me. You can't do anything on your own. You're worthless. What do you mean you're going to leave? You can't. I bring you this money. It's a horrible, horrible relationship. And it's, hammered into somebody's head, figuratively and literally, that they can't leave and they got to stay with this person that's doing it. If you get cancer, you want to go beat it. The cancer doesn't tell you, don't fight me. If you're abused, the actual harm causing agent is telling you not to cure yourself of it. So it's this insidious, horrible thing. So my heart goes out to women, anybody that has that happen to them. My
guess is that a lot of that comes from childhood.
Oh, absolutely.
I have a hard time imagining that you could grow up with a constant message of reassurance that you are valuable and wonderful and capable of doing great things, and then falling into those relationships. I don't think it's impossible.
No.
But I think it's sure is a lot less likely.
You're absolutely right.
I praise those organizations that take on the people who have been told that, not just by their abuser, but from their childhood probably. That's a powerful message, and I think that that's a great cause for you to pick up. So in any case, Dan, I want to thank you for your time. This has been a fantastic conversation, and I really appreciate your examples.
It's flown by. I love it. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Everybody else, thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed the interview and found useful ideas about things you can do with your kids. Be sure to check the show notes at www.choosethenickel.com for links to names, books, and other resources we discussed in today's show. Also, please subscribe to our newsletter and visit our contact page where you can give us feedback. You can subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, and YouTube, and you can follow Choose the Nickel on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. We invite you to share Choose the Nickel with your friends and join us in our quest to teach kids financial freedom. This interview does not constitute legal advice and does not create an attorney-client relationship with any listener. We touch on general legal principles, but laws vary significantly from state to state, so our discussion cannot be relied upon for your specific situation. Your fact pattern is unique, and you should contact an attorney licensed in your state before doing anything of legal importance.